Hey everybody, welcome into Friday's edition of To The Point Podcast. We're all doing well. It is August 26th. We are almost through the month, as I mentioned yesterday. And today we got a NFC North preview, so an NFL preview show. I'm going to touch on a few things before we get to the preview, but these are going to continue to happen. I've done two thus far. NFC North today. We're going to do the NFC South later this weekend. So that's another podcast coming your way this weekend. We are going to do the 4 AFC previews next week. So those are coming. And then a week from Monday, I'm gonna unveil my top 32 quarterbacks list. That's coming in the next week. Matt Wright is joining next Friday. We're going to do our first iteration of the Gambling Friday show prior to college football / NFL Sundays. We're going to talk a little about lines, about different gambling things. If you want me to cover anything, let me know. I'm going to try to talk about it all, try to talk about different spreads, parlays, different things I'm thinking about betting on, because I started betting. It really was after last. I started gambling again. I wasn't a huge gambler prior to, even when I was in university. I wasn't. I'm very cheap. I don't like to spend money. But I saw an opportunity. I think if you know how to gamble well, and I think I'm an okay gambler. I'm not fantastic, but if you also have control of your money, if you control what you're doing, I think it's fun, and you can do it without worrying about, losing your life savings. So what I did is I started betting about the Masters. So that was in April, and I've continued since. I like gambling golf primarily. I like gambling UFC. So this is going to be my first NFL college football gambling season, really, where I'm going to be putting bets in, putting money on the line. So I'm going to be doing it with all of you. It's going to be a work in progress. I know how the gambling works for the NFL and for college football. I know what these lines are. I'm aware of backdoor covers, all the things that come with gambling in the NFL. I am very familiar with. People have asked my advice, and I've given them gambling lines for years now when it comes to different picks and different parlays and survivor pools. So we're going to do that all here on the show. So that's something we're going to incorporate. So that's going to be every Friday during the NFL / college football season. That's not going to change. I'm going to be here. We're going to do it. As I mentioned, this summer you lose time, things happen, you want to visit friends. That's over. I truly mean this. The next 6 months, it's buckled down. I'm doing 6 shows a week. I promise you that. And there's going to be a ton of content. The social media for this podcast is going to improve. I'm not great at it. I'm getting help. We're going to do better. I want this to be a great community. I'm going to do my part to make it better, to make it more worthwhile for all of you, so that it's a great experience for you, and maybe it'll benefit me as well. So that's where I see this going. It's a partnership between the listeners and myself, and hopefully we both benefit through information, fun. And I will say this, when you are gambling on an event, whether it's UFC, I think you can enjoy it without having a bias. And I truly mean that, because if I lose $20, I'm not going to kill myself over it. I lost money on the Usman knockout this past Saturday when Leon Edwards knocked him out in the 5th round. It was crazy. A stunning knockout. One of the most clutch, one of the most shocking developments in recent sports history for me was Leon Edwards knocking out Kamaru Usman. Complete stunner to me. And I lost money. I could have, if I needed Usman to knock out Edwards. He wasn't going to. It was in the 5th round. I needed him to knock out Edwards. I would have won $180. I had a parlay. I had Costa winning that night. I had a few other fights that went my way. I had 3 right. I had the 4th fight was the Usman one. So I would have came away with $180. I lose 20. I can live with that, and I don't even get upset. So I think you can find a balance. If gambling's not for you, just stick with me and see what other people are gambling. Let's have a little interaction. And I think it's fun. I think it's a way to connect with one another. And, just the NFL season's fun. The college football season's fun. Fan bases go crazy. I'm sure all of you have your teams, and sometimes it can be incredibly frustrating. Growing up a Dolphins fan, I didn't have any good times until I dropped all my allegiances. The Dolphins did nothing but hurt me my entire career, my entire fan career. They were horrible. They made the playoffs twice in my life. They they did nothing to help me. They did nothing to make me want to cheer for them. My parents grew up Dolphins and Maple Leaf fans. It was nothing but kick in the nuts year over year. I had friends, family that rooted for the Patriots, that rooted for different teams that actually won something, that at least made the playoffs. So it wasn't a whole lot of fun for me as a fan. But when you're gambling, when you're watching a Monday Night Football game and you're like, well, why do I want to watch this game? If you have $10 on the game, you can parlay that into 50. You're going to stay up. You're going to watch late in the game. You're going to see if they're going to kick that field goal. Are they going to gamble on fourth down? These certain things make the game a little more intriguing. It keeps you in your seat longer. And ultimately, you'll come back to me to hear about all this, and we'll make bets for the next week. So I think it's going to be a ton of fun. I mentioned the college football season starts tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to podcast tomorrow, NFC South Preview. Got those notes done. That's in the chamber. So we're going to do that tomorrow morning. I'll do some betting lines for the week 0 in college football tomorrow morning. So we're going to do that podcast tomorrow. Sunday will be an off day for the show. Monday, we're back. Content fully loaded. Seamus will be back Tuesday. We got previews all next week leading into the NFL season, which starts a week Thursday. Hallelujah, somebody. So that is what's on the docket here on To The Point. Lots of great content coming in the very near future. Now, before we get to the NFC North, a few notes from last night. Watching NFL preseason, there's 2 games last night. San Francisco, Houston, Green Bay, Kansas City. I try not to overreact in the preseason. You can really overreact. Trey Lance in his first preseason game looked fantastic for the San Francisco 49ers, a team I like a lot. He was throwing the ball deep. He was scrambling. And then you go into last night, and he only completes 40% of his passes. Didn't have a whole lot of time out of the pocket. And it wasn't a great night for Trey Lance. The San Francisco 49ers put up 0 points. Brock Purdy looked okay in relief as potentially the next backup quarterback there with Jimmy Garoppolo on the way out. And that's what I took away. I still like the 49ers a lot. As we get closer to the beginning of the season, I will reveal my Super Bowl prediction. We'll do that the week of kickoff, likely Tuesday, Wednesday of that week. Trey Lance, to me, is the key to San Francisco. He makes them they have a roster that can win a Super Bowl. Corner position is weak for them. That's absolutely true. It's not a strength of the team. It's definitely something that could hinder them. But Trey Lance is the key. He can unlock everything here. They got Deebo Samuel. They got George Kittle. They got a Nick Bosa on defense. They got Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, maybe the best middle linebacker in football. San Francisco got to the NFC Championship game last year. If Trey Lance is what San Francisco drafted him, hoping he would be, 3rd overall pick in the draft out of North Dakota State, they absolutely can get there again. He's only played 2 regular season games, and one of the games that he played, he only played a few snaps because he injured his finger. We don't know what he is as an NFL quarterback yet, but I'm so intrigued to watch. San Francisco is going to be one of those teams out west. They're in an interesting division, and I can't wait to see what they bring week in, week out. A player that flashed for me. There's always a few players that flash every game. A corner for Houston really flashed last night, and a guy to me that won the starting running back job for the Houston Texans last night. They signed Marlon Mack, who was with the Indianapolis Colts originally. I think they believe that Marlon Mack will be their running back 1. Potentially Rex Burkhead would be the number 2 back, who's more of a receiving guy, as we remember him being that in New England and briefly in Cincinnati. Well, Marlon Mack might not even make the roster. He might be cut because they don't want to keep that many running backs. The player that flashed last night in the preseason was Dameon Pierce, running back at the University of Florida. He is a power back. He is going to be the bell cow for the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans will not be on national TV this season. They'll play one Thursday night game because every team has to play one. They are not going to be a team you remember because they're not going to be particularly good. Brandon Cooks will get 1,000 yards receiving because that's just what he does quietly. Davis Mills will be competing to be the quarterback of the future while the Texans are pondering what they should do at quarterback moving forward. And I think Dameon Pierce is going to have a quiet, good season. He could be a sneaky good fantasy running back. If you're looking for one, you're in a later round. I think Dameon Pierce is going to be a touchdown machine for the Houston Texans. He's that power back. He's not easy to tackle, and he has some elusivity to him that many power running backs do not have. He was not used as a primary back at Florida. I think he can be one in the National Football League. Dameon Pierce was the player that flashed for me last night. He jumped off the screen. He will be running back one for the Houston Texans. Remember the name, Dameon Pierce. The biggest news in the NFL yesterday was that Tyron Smith, the left tackle of the Dallas Cowboys, is an all-pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, may just end up in the Hall of Fame someday alongside his teammate Zach Martin, injured himself again. Tore his hamstring in practice. Tyron Smith has had many injuries in his career, multiple concussions. He's had neck injuries that have lingered for the last 3 seasons. And he's missed at least 8 games the last 4 years of his NFL career. While he tears his hamstring in practice, they're saying maybe he'll be back by December. Potentially miss the entire regular season. This is a big, big deal for the Dallas Cowboys. They are trying to blend together a new offensive line. They drafted Tyler Smith in the first round. He might not start in that offensive line. He may now have to because of this injury. Connor Williams is a Miami Dolphin. He wasn't exactly a stud in Dallas, but he's gone. It's another body to move through. Zach Martin's coming back. This offensive line is new, and now you're losing the most important person on an offensive line when your quarterback is right-handed, which 31 out of the 32 starters are, Tua Tagovailoa being the only exception down in South Beach. Tyron Smith protects Dak Prescott. He helps in the run game with Ezekiel Elliott and with obviously Tony Pollard is the other running back there. This is a big loss for the Cowboys. We've seen offensive line injuries so far in the season. Tyron Smith went down. We saw Ryan Jensen, the center, go down for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. McKinney tears his ACL, another guy in the Buccaneers offensive line. He's out for the season. We'll talk about that tomorrow when we do the NFC South preview. When you're a quarterback, offensive line is more important, and this is absolutely true, than wide receivers. You need to stay upright. For Tom Brady, having an offensive line that is sturdy is more important than Mike Evans or Russell Gage or Cameron Brate, whoever he's throwing the ball to. Dak Prescott, second season following that terrible ankle injury. He was not a mobile quarterback last year. He looked afraid to move outside the pocket. I don't know how he's going to react this year after another year of being away, of not having to deal with it, but it's definitely a question mark. Is he going to be comfortable in the pocket? Is he going to be willing to move around? Is he going to be willing to scramble? Those questions have not been answered yet. So we need to wait and see what's going to happen with Dak Prescott moving forward. But as of right now, Tyron Smith being out and a new offensive line is just dangerous to me. The Philadelphia Eagles have one of the best to me, they have the best offensive line in football, and to date, they have not had an injury yet. With this news, seeing these offensive linemen go down, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers didn't play last night. Get it. Trey Lance should have played, which he did. He needs the reps. He's played very little football the last 3 seasons. But I'm looking around. Jalen Hurts doesn't need to play in the next Eagles preseason game, which I believe is tomorrow. I believe. Yes, against the Jaguars tomorrow afternoon. He doesn't need to play. He just doesn't. That offensive line, Jason Kelsey's 34 years old. They got an old offensive line, but it's great. They don't need to play. Brandon Brooks should not be playing. After seeing these injuries, I am waiting till the regular season. Get the reps in practice. They'll get the feel. They'll work it out. They have 2 weeks after this one to get ready for the start of the season. They get a bye week this upcoming weekend before the start of the NFL season. Use that practice time to get ready. I'm not starting any important people. In particular, teams where your strength, I'm not putting my strength on the field. For the Eagles, it's their offensive line. That's their strength. In Tennessee, Derrick Henry is not taking a damn snap in the preseason. For Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers is not taking a snap. You can go through every team, you can find their strength. They're not playing. And most times, if you're not starting your starting offensive line, you're not starting your starting quarterback because you don't want to risk him taking hits. If Chad Henne in Kansas City gets his head taken off and he's going to miss a few games, well, that's okay. We got Shane Bukele, who's behind him, who's played pretty well in the preseason anyway. That's how you should approach this. Multiple games tonight. Cowboys are playing Seattle tonight. Dak Prescott's not playing. I think he will. He's not playing for me. He's not played in the first 2 preseason games. That's fine. He's a veteran. He can figure it out. Ezekiel Elliott is not playing a snap. My offensive line is not taking a snap. That's for damn sure. Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen's not playing. No way. No chance. Seattle. Yeah, you play both guys. Geno Smith, Drew, who cares? One of them gets hurt. Your team stinks and your quarterback position's weak. Play them both. Who cares? Maybe Pete Carroll does. He has to pretend to care. He has to pretend that both quarterbacks are going to be good for him when he knows that the team's going to stink and he's going to be 70 years old on the sideline running up and down with his team down 30 this season. Should be fun. But you get my point here. I'm not starting any of my important people unless I really, really feel I have to. Like Tom Brady is playing tomorrow. He's 45 years old. Okay, he missed a week of training camp, which I don't know why people are so interested in. Whatever he did, whether he went on The Masked Singer, whether he took a family vacation. He can't take a family vacation. Why does everybody need to know? They're asking him questions. It's none of their business, quite frankly. I guarantee he plays well week 1. If anybody has an opposite opinion, let's throw down a bet. Let's throw down a bet that Tom Brady will have more than a 55% completion percentage in week 1. And I'm going to say the Bucs are going to beat the Cowboys. Anybody wants to take that action with me? Let's set up a bet. We'll do it. Whatever you want to do. Money, pie to the face, whatever you want, whatever kind of bet you want, you got it. But I don't see Tom Brady faltering because he didn't play in the 3rd and final preseason game. GMFAB. Give me a fucking break. Anyway, NFL, it's fun. I watch the preseason. I know. Before we get to NFC North, some news here. Julio Rodriguez, who likely will be Rookie of the Year in Major League Baseball, is a center fielder for the Seattle Mariners. Came second in the home run derby. Really a phenom guy. He's taking the league by storm. And his flair, his demeanor, his willingness to be a star reminds me of Fernando Tatis Jr. III when he came into the league. Well, what did San Diego do with Fernando Tatis Jr. III? They gave him a long-term extension. Well before he got to arbitration, well before he got to certain points, they gave him a big deal. They gave him the money so that he felt comfortable and the team could lock up a superstar player for years to come. Now, you could argue that this is a cautionary tale for teams. You see what happened with Tatis. He's suspended. He's not playing. He seems incredibly immature. But Seattle is taking the same approach. Julio Rodriguez has just signed a 14-year deal with the Mariners, reportedly worth more than $400 million. Wow. Now, these can go either way. It's 14 years. I think Julio Rodriguez is 21, 22 years old. So you're there till your mid-30s. If I truly believe myself and I believe I'm going to be a star player, I do not want to sign a 14-year contract because I don't want to be anywhere for 14 years. I don't want to. You think 14 years? I mean, yes, some people stay in their hometown for 14 years because you have to. You got to go through high school, all that. But after that, do you really want to stay there? I'm still in my hometown, but that's not where I want to be in 2 years, 6 months. I'll tell my parents. But no, you don't want to stay there. Maybe some people do. You're comfortable with it. That's what you know. But you're looking to grow, right? I think you want to try different things. You want to try to maximize your earning potential. So Jeff Passan saying the deal is expected to guarantee Rodriguez $210 million over 14 years and could be worth over $400 million with incentives. Rodriguez has put together a terrific rookie season as a front runner to take home AL Rookie of the Year honors. 21-year-old owns a 7.99 OPS with 20 home runs, 64 RBIs, and 23 stolen bases across 108 games. He's a fantastic player. He is. Seattle has not made the playoffs in over 20 years. 1999, or sorry, 2001 to be exact. Over 20 years. They are trying to be relevant again. J.P. Crawford, Julio Rodriguez, Mitch Haniger, Jared Kelenic, who hasn't worked out yet, but he was a high draft pick. Logan Gilbert's been a fantastic pitcher. They signed Robbie Ray this offseason. Seattle is trying to get themselves back on the map. They get a 21-year-old phenom who maybe they look at Juan Soto and say, when this guy becomes available, he's not going to want to stay in Seattle. Let's give him a pile of money right now. If the reports are true, which I have no reason to believe they're not, because it's Jeff Passan and he's never wrong on baseball type things, $210 million guaranteed with $400. That's $190 million that you have to earn with incentives. That's a lot of money. If I'm signing a 14-year deal, I'm getting much more than $210 million guaranteed. I don't care that I'm only in my first year. If they don't want to give me that money, tell them to kick rocks. I don't like these contracts. These contracts are long. These contracts hinder free agency. They hinder intrigue. Good for him for taking the money. $210 million is life-changing wealth. His family will be set up for the rest of his life. He believes he's a great player. He can get that $190 million that he has to earn in incentives. I know if it's for myself, I could be the most confident person in the world. I could be the best player in my sport. I could be Aaron Donald in football. I don't care. You're giving me more money guaranteed because guess what? I'm worth it. Just a thought, but good for him. Speaking of intrigue in baseball and free agency, in a year's time, almost a month and change, a year and a month. So you got about 13 months time. There we go. Shohei Ohtani, the Los Angeles Angels phenom, reigning American League MVP, will be a free agent. He will be able to depart the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and sign wherever he damn well pleases. Could be the Dodgers, could be the Yankees, could be another team, unlikely because they won't give him that kind of money. So it's really not that intriguing, but maybe he goes somewhere else. That would be nice for a change. Shohei Ohtani is 13 months away from being a free agent. Artie Moreno, the terrible owner of the Los Angeles Angels, said yesterday he's hoping to sell the team. Now, I'm sure whoever owns the team would like Shohei Ohtani to be on that roster when they buy the team. Artie Moreno has done terrible decisions since taking over there, bringing in Albert Pujols, bringing no pitching to the roster, Anthony Rendon, keeping Mike Scioscia for 15 years, adding no pieces alongside Mike Trout, not asking Mike Trout to be more interesting on the microphone. Maybe that's not all his fault, but I put some of that on him. The Angels have been a team that has zero intrigue. They have no fans. There's nothing about them, but they have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. So while Ohtani may only be an Angel for the next 13 months, potentially less with the trade deadline next year, 2023 trade deadline, maybe he's traded elsewhere for 1 year of a deep playoff run. In the present, tomorrow, Shohei Ohtani will be taking the mound in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And Shohei Ohtani will be going up head-to-head against the Blue Jays ace, Alek Manoah. There are certain pitching matchups that are, if you tune into the game, you see Ross Stripling pitching if you're a Blue Jays fan. He's going to pitch well. He has all season, but are you really that excited to see Ross Stripling pitch? Probably not. When you watch the Red Sox, are you really so stoked to see Cutter Crawford last night pitch? Is Nestor Cortez doing it for you for the Yankees? I could go through every team and name a pitcher that Pablo Lopez, I like him in Miami, but most people wouldn't know him. You're waiting to see Sandy Alcantara. You're waiting to see Shohei Ohtani. You're waiting to see Alek Manoah. You're waiting to see Garrett Cole get lit up. This matchup is appointment viewing television. This is a game that I will watch tomorrow afternoon. Normally, you hear Saturday afternoon, late August, maybe the weather will be decent, the last true weekend of summer, if you will. And you say Angels against the Blue Jays. Normally, I'm not watching that. I'll watch week 0 of the college football season, which I will too. Don't worry about that. But normally, it's not something that is on my radar. Not something I'm dying to see. I'm not going out of my way to watch the Blue Jays play the Angels. Just like I didn't go out of my way to watch the Blue Jays play the Red Sox last night because I had better things to do. Well, not really. I watched NFL preseason football, but then again, I also watched the CFL. So football reigns supreme. But tomorrow afternoon, in the midst of watching Nebraska and Northwestern, and in the midst of flipping to the Tour Championship at East Lake, I will be watching Shohei Ohtani against Alek Manoah because these two guys are worth the watch. Two of the best pitchers in all of baseball are going head-to-head in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I think tomorrow's crowd at the Rogers Centre will be one of the biggest of the season. The Blue Jays have won 7 of their last 8. They're looking like the team everybody thought they were before the season, maybe. But it doesn't matter about the record. It doesn't matter that the Angels completely stink. It's about the story. It's about who's playing. It's the fact that you get to see the Unicorn and the British Bulldog go head-to-head tomorrow afternoon. I know if I'm in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, I get my hands on a ticket, I'm going to see this game. I got to see Shohei Ohtani pitch in April. Great decision. He's just a fantastic guy to watch on the mound. If you can get your ass to a game tomorrow, if you're not doing anything in the afternoon and you maybe want to hit a sea-doo, go to a beach, whatever you like to do with your spare time, I might get home in time for 4 o'clock to watch Shohei Ohtani against Alek Manoah. Because I expect this to be a very entertaining affair. I expect this game to be close because both pitchers are fantastic. But you get to see Vladdy Guerrero go against Shohei Ohtani. You get to see the Jays bats. Hopefully you get to see Mike Trout play center field and go head-to-head with Alek Manoah. He's dominated Aaron Judge this year, the home run king. How will he manage against Mike Trout, one of the best players in the history of the game? Wait to see. We'll wait to see. You only have to wait till tomorrow because I think it's going to be a great game. That's the news from last night. Now we get to the bulk of today's show. The NFC North. Just to recap, I know you guys know, but I just want to tell you anyway. NFC North consists of the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions, who are featured on Hard Knocks on HBO this year, or Crave here in Canada, and the Green Bay Packers, a.k.a. the Cheeseheads. It's an interesting division. It's been one dominated by the Packers for many, many years. Aaron Rodgers winning back-to-back MVPs the past 2 seasons. The Chicago Bears being inept for seemingly since 1985. The Detroit Lions struggling to come back to relevancy, and the Minnesota Vikings spiraling into mediocrity year after year after year. Well, for once, I expect this division to be intriguing at the very least and compelling, and we'll get to the reasons why. But let's start with the team that very well could be the worst team in the NFL this year. And I'm not being hyperbolic, I'm not being facetious. This team stinks. And I feel bad for the quarterback, and that is the Chicago Bears, led by sophomore quarterback Justin Fields. Justin Fields, the Ohio State product, Heisman finalist once upon a time, played in a national championship game, losing to the University of Alabama. Justin Fields is entering year two, and surprisingly, he enters year two with less weapons than he had in year one, which is hard to believe. Really hard to believe. Because he did not have a whole lot to work with last season. Allen Robinson is gone. He's a Ram. Jimmy Graham is gone. You look around, and there's less for him to work with, not to mention his offensive line is worse than it used to. So, let's get to the Bears. The biggest changes for this team are that their entire coaching / front office structure is gone. Matt Nagy was fired the day after the season. Ryan Pace was fired the same day. The Chicago Bears have a completely new regime. They have new people in charge. They have new things going on in Chicago, and they're trying to build a foundation, trying to build something for the future. Now, the question is Justin Fields the guy that's going to do it? 10th pick in the draft. I mentioned all his accolades in college. But it's a new regime. They have new ideas, and looking at the talent and looking at the team that is around Justin Fields, they could have convinced me to the contrary. Let's start with an offensive line that is improved-ish. They brought in veterans in Lucas Patrick, who was with the Kansas City Chiefs. But if you recall, the Kansas City Chiefs have had a terrible offensive line the last number of years, so hold that thought. They also brought in Riley Reif, who was cut from the Minnesota Vikings. He was the weakest point of their offensive line. He gave up the most sacks for the Vikings last season. So if you're thinking with me, you're following along, you're saying, well, their offensive line, they brought in new pieces, but the pieces don't seem to be any better, you'd be correct. The Chicago Bears are an inept franchise. They do nothing to try to win, and I expect the same this year. They brought in N'Keal Harry, the cast-off wide receiver from the New England Patriots, another draft pick bust of Bill Belichick of the receiver position because he can't draft them. N'Keal Harry, who was traded for a conditional 7th-round pick and was then hurt in training camp. He might not even play this season. Oy vey. Byron Pringle was added from Kansas City. He's more of a gadget guy, not exactly a receiver you expect to play every snap. It's ugly here. Darnell Mooney is the best thing I can give you about the Bears receiving corps. Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields, I think, will have a connection deep down the field. Mooney is a guy that can break the field open. He can make deep catches. A very good player. They drafted Velus Jones Jr. He's a rookie in this offense. They need him to step up with Aquemius St. Brown sitting in the wings for this team. They also got Cole Kmet, who is a good tight end. I'm waiting to see what he can bring offensively game in, game out. If him and Justin Fields can get a connection for one another, because he could be imperative in helping in the blocking for this offensive line and also for the running game. If the Bears are going to be competent offensively this season, it's going to be because of their running game, and they're going to need to – Matt Eberflus, who is the new head coach, who is a defensive-minded head coach, was the defensive coordinator in Indianapolis last year. If this team is going to be competent, they need to do something that Matt Nagy refused to do on a consistent basis, and that's run the damn ball. Run the ball, because they have two great running backs in David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. Montgomery is a shifty back. He can break open plays. He can catch balls out of the backfield and is very much a guy that has some elusivity and can make things happen in the open field. Khalil Herbert is a power back. He's a guy that's going to take it to you. He'll run over middle linebackers. He's a physical guy that had a really good season last year for limited snaps. He started to get the ball at the midpoint of last season when David Montgomery got hurt. He started to get some reps, and they bring him back for another season with Montgomery. The Bears can have a similar running attack to the Green Bay Packers, and we'll touch on Green Bay in a bit on why this can be similar, because you got Aaron Jones, you got A.J. Dillon, you got a shifty guy, you have a speed guy, and then you have a power back to complement one another. The Bears didn't run the ball. They ran the ball only 15 times per game last season with a rookie quarterback, if you can believe it. They didn't use guys in space. Darnell Mooney should be used in the running game. Pringle can be used in the running game. Justin Fields needs to run the ball more. This team is going to excel if they're playing good football in play action. Play action and bootlegs are only effective when an offensive line is holding up, when a running attack is a viable threat. For instance, you cannot run play action on a 2nd and 13 when you run the ball 7 times in a game and you've gained 7 yards. Here's why. The defense is not going to respect the run. They're going to be prepping for the pass, and when you run a bootleg to the right, which Justin Fields does extremely well and something he excelled in college, the defense is not going to bite. They're not going to go all the way to the left when you're running right. They're going to stay with you. You have very limited time to get rid of the football, and there's a very good chance you're either going to have to throw the ball away and you'll get knocked on the ground, your ass on the ground, throwing the ball away, or you're going to take a sack. So for the pass game to work effectively, there are teams that don't need play action to be successful. The Pittsburgh Steelers did not use play action forever, and Ben Roethlisberger was a successful quarterback because he was a statue guy. He just stayed in the pocket. That's how they did it. Tom Brady, he does use play action. He does use that in his scheme, but it's not paramount to his game because he's not moving out of the pocket. He's a statue there. That's just the way he plays the position. So that is so paramount that the run game is effective, and that can lead to Justin Fields having more time for plays to develop, and having some success, just basic football 101. I mentioned this offensive line. I have X factors for every team. I do that with these previews, and we're going to start with my first X factor is no injuries to Justin Fields, and that is paramount to O-line, show the hell up. That's in my notes. Literally, dead quote. Show the hell up. So currently they have Braxton Jones, newcomer, left tackle. Not real enthused about that. Don't expect big things. You got Cody Whitehair, returning left guard. He used to be a center. He's not playing center anymore. That makes you feel good. Lucas Patrick has shifted to center, as I just mentioned, used to be at the Kansas City Chiefs. Taven Jenkins is a returner. Riley Reif is brought in from Minnesota. This offensive line might be one of the worst in football. I really have no hopes for them. I don't expect to see a whole lot of competency here, and I worry about Justin Fields. The worst thing you can do for a quarterback when they're young is give them no protection. Justin Herbert was killed in his first 2 seasons. Why? We'll talk about Cincinnati next week. They went out and added to that offensive line. They added some great players to protect him so he can have a long career. They didn't do that with David Carr in Houston. He got sacked. He's been sacked, just killed, and he was out of the league soon after because he couldn't take those hits anymore. Brett Favre is an anomaly. He took a lot of hits. He kept wanting them, but that's just the way Brett Favre played the position. Justin Fields is not built that way. If he is sacked 40 to 50 times this season, he is going to break down. He is going to miss games for the Chicago Bears. It's just going to happen because that's just the way it works. So the offensive line needs to hope that they can find some cohesion and play good football, because I don't have a whole lot of faith in them doing it right now. And I'm a Justin Fields fan. I like him. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's got a whole lot of talent and a lot of upside. But If I had to, we're talking about betting at the beginning of the show. If I had to put a bet down that Justin Fields makes all 17 starts, I would go with the under. If it was 16 and a half starts, I'd go under, and I believe we'll see Trevor Siemian start a game or two this year. Justin Fields is a guy that moves. He's going to have to move. He's going to have to run for his life with this offense. You're moving, you take a hit in open space, potentially you miss a game. Trevor Siemian's a backup quarterback. He's been all around the league. New Orleans, Denver, Minnesota. He's now the backup quarterback in Chicago. I expect we see Trevor Siemian, the Northwestern product, in a game this season and starting for the Chicago Bears. So get ready for that. Second X factor, pass rush. This offseason, Khalil Mack was traded to the Los Angeles Chargers. Khalil Mack is gone. He was their best pass rusher last season. And I look at this team. Robert Quinn is returning. He had 18 sacks last year. Career season, fantastic year for Robert Quinn. But he had playing with him Khalil Mack. Well, now he has Trevis Gibson, who's not exactly a great player. Angelo Blackson, a rookie, who the hell knows. Justin Jones at right defensive end, and you have Robert Quinn. Roquan Smith plays middle linebacker. He doesn't rush the quarterback that often. Jalen Johnson's at corner. I don't see a pass rush that's going to get to the opposing team's quarterback all that often. Robert Quinn had the benefit. I mentioned last year, he was not getting double teamed. He will be getting double teamed this year because he's going to have nobody on the other side that any team fears. He had 18 sacks last year. I think he'll diminish by at least 10. I think he has under 8 sacks this year for the Chicago Bears. Robert Quinn will have under 7.5 sacks because he's not going to have teammates that can help him out. Potentially he gets to a higher number because he's traded at a trade deadline like Von Miller was last year to Los Angeles, where he's got great players around him and he has an opportunity to strike, an opportunity to get more numbers and pad to his stats before the year is over. But the pass rush with the defense, I don't think the Bears have a terrible defense. Eddie Jackson, who's their free safety out of Alabama, had the worst season of his career last year. Gave up the most yards, bid a lot, and gambled and got burned. Had a tough year. Kyler Gordon's a rookie that got playing corner. I'm excited to see him play. He was special in college. Jalen Johnson can be a good player at left. The cornerback position, I think, will be a strength for the Chicago Bears. Roquan Smith is back after requesting a trade. He's a hell of a player. We know what he is. But the rest of this defense, I don't have a whole lot of faith in. It doesn't jump off the screen that they're going to be that competent. If they're going to be good, they need to make tackles. They had the most missed tackles by any secondary last season. That's courtesy of ESPN. That is the Chicago Bears secondary had the most missed tackles. Eddie Jackson led the NFL last season in missed tackles by a secondary. Plays safety, so in the secondary, he had the most missed tackles. They need to tackle, they need to get up to the box, and they need to be physical early with teams. Because if the pass rush isn't working, teams are not going to be afraid to throw the football on you. Or you're going to say, well, maybe we can just run on this team. You can open up play action, and when you open up play action, that can lead to big plays down the field. But they need to make tackles. Eddie Jackson used to be a ball hawk. He used to be Xavier Howard, what Xavier Howard now is in Miami, where he intercepted balls left and right. He did it at Alabama. He did it his first number of years as a member of Chicago Bears. This defense can be decent. Jalen Johnson can return to form. Eddie Jackson can return to form. Kyler Gordon can be special. Absolutely. Will that happen? That remains to be seen. But for this defense, the secondary is more important than the pass rush, and I'll put it this way. In the modern NFL, your secondary can't be better than your pass rush. Your secondary can't be better than your front seven because it's so difficult to cover in the NFL. Not to mention the NFL has put an emphasis on calling illegal touches, illegal hands, and that's something they're going to call more. I expect the receivers to get the benefit of the whistle at least early on into this season. For corners to get called for pass interference, get called for these type plays early in the year. So maybe it is good coverage, but it's questionable. You're not getting any pass rush. So guys are getting opportunity to just quarterbacks taking all day to throw the ball down the field. They got all the time in the world. So that could bode tough for the Chicago Bears as well. But it bodes down to, can Robert Quinn be productive without a whole lot of help? Can David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert be effective? And will Matt Eberflus, the new head coach, run the football? It's not that difficult. I know it's a passing league now, but you can still run the ball. Tennessee won 12 games last year. Their over-under before the season was 8.5. Because Derrick Henry is the best running back in football. Jonathan Taylor runs the football a ton. Ezekiel Elliott ran the football a ton his first number of years. The Cowboys got 12 wins in Dak and Zeke's rookie seasons. If you have a great running back, which I think David Montgomery is, there's a lot of really good running backs in this division. Lions don't really have one. But you look around, Dalvin Cook is a stud for the Vikings. They got a pair of really good running backs in Green Bay. Use your running attack to your advantage. If you're a team that doesn't have a whole lot of advantages, you need to use the one advantage that you do have. Use your backs. Help Justin Fields. Help with blocking. As I look at the Bears, the best thing they can hope for this year is that Justin Fields plays every game. He gets reps. He stays healthy. And he gets better. He goes through a tough situation and he embraces it and gets better at the end of the year. You look at him and say, you know what? Justin Fields really improved. He took it on the chin. He didn't complain. He's a soldier. He's a guy we want running an offense. He's a guy we want running a team for many years to come. That would be a positive sign for the Chicago Bears. Whether that happens or not, like I said, I don't think he's going to start every game because I think he's going to get the hell beat out of him. It's a failure of a new regime to not add to an offensive line that I think is good enough. Prayers up for Justin Fields because he's going to need it this season with the help that he has around him. Now, the Minnesota Vikings have been the same for the last 4 or 5 seasons. They've had Kirk D. Cousins at quarterback. They've had Dalvin Cook at running back. They've had competent receivers, Adam Thielen being one of the biggest touchdown guys in the NFL. And they've always been a mediocre team. They won a playoff game against the New Orleans Saints a number of years back, the Minnesota Miracle. They got within a game of the Super Bowl. They're always a good team, never great, the Minnesota Vikings. So as we sit here now, you think, well, Minnesota's going to be Minnesota again. Well, maybe not. For the first time in 8 years, the Minnesota Vikings have a new head coach. Mike Zimmer is finally gone as the head coach of the Vikings. He is out. He is on Deion Sanders' coaching staff at Jackson State University. Gary Kubiak and Clint Kubiak are gone as co-offensive coordinators. They are turning over a new leaf in Minnesota. Kirk D. Cousins is back, but Zimmer is gone. Zimmer, as mentioned on the record, that he didn't like Cousins as his quarterback. He never trusted him, and Mike Zimmer is a defensive-minded head coach that's very much old school. He wasn't working, and finally Minnesota made a change. They have brought in Kevin O'Connell, who was the OC in Los Angeles last year with Coach Sean McVay, and he's getting his first opportunity to be a head coach like Matt Eberflus is in Chicago. O'Connell won a Super Bowl. He's had some success, but he's never been a head coach, and he's never gotten this type of opportunity. But we've seen the offense that they run in Los Angeles with the high play action, with bootlegs. But I would say the one thing that Kevin O'Connell has to his advantage that the Rams didn't have last year is that the Minnesota Vikings have a running attack that can go with anybody. Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison are a great 1-2 tandem at the running back position. Dalvin Cook, when healthy, is one of the best running backs in football, period, end of story. He can do everything. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He can break an 80-yard touchdown run. His problem the last number of years, he seems to miss 2 to 4 games a season. Mattinson is a good player, is a good backup running back. He can fill in and do important things. It's just finding a good connection of guys that can play the position and do it well. X factor number 1 for the Minnesota Vikings, aggressive play calling. When you watch the Minnesota Vikings, you rewatch games in Minnesota, you watch them on tape, you look at this team and you just say, yeah, they played well. They were close to winning, but if they lose a game, you look at it and you say, well, they on 3rd and 6, they checked it down. Kirk Cousins didn't want to take a chance. They checked it down. They ran a simple play. Why didn't they do more on that play? I want to see this offense that has the capability to be explosive, be explosive. You look at this offense, I mentioned the running back positions. Justin Jefferson, at the end of this season, will be looked at as a top 5 receiver in all of football, potentially in the top 3. He is that good. He's been a great draft pick for Minnesota. The one thing I think that Kirk Cousins does too much is he force feeds the ball to Justin Jefferson. Give him lots of targets. He can catch the ball, but you also have Adam Thielen. You have good players around him. You look around, they got KJ Osborne, who is a good player. You got Irv Smith Jr. at tight end. They have a good team here. They have a good offense. You have good backs. There's a lot going for this Minnesota team. But make aggressive play calling, a play action play, get guys going down the field. And Kirk Cousins, don't be afraid to throw a deep ball. He can throw a nice deep. He's a competent quarterback, Kirk Cousins. He's not a game breaker, but he's a good enough quarterback to get to the playoffs, potentially compete for a division title. He can do that. The Minnesota Vikings have a better receiving core than the Green Bay Packers. That's not up for debate. It's not a discussion. They just do. So that's something. That's my number 1, is just aggressive play calling. Number 2, I would look at Tyler Conklin is gone at tight end. He's now a New York Jet. I like Tyler Conklin a lot for this team. Their adds to this team, Jesse Davis is over from the Dolphins at an offensive line. Harrison Phillips is over pass rush. Jordan Hicks, Zadarius Smith. So we're going to get to their defense in a minute because I have some question marks about their defense. Their offensive line is competent. Garrett Bradbury's returning. Brian O'Neill at right tackle is returning. Jesse Davis and Ezra Cleveland are 2 newcomers to this offensive line. What I would say about this offensive line, Darashaw was drafted out of Alabama. I think it's a good offensive line, but with injuries, it's extremely thin. They don't have a whole lot of veterans that can just step in and play. They don't have a whole lot of options if something happens. I think Garrett Bradbury is a good center. I think him and Kirk Cousins have a good rapport, so I'm not concerned about that. But what I would worry about with Minnesota is if they get an injury to that offensive line, can somebody come in and fill that gap? So you can say that for most teams, but I do think some teams do a better job where you have veterans and you have a guy that you're working into that offensive line to step in and play, and he can do a competent job. The Eagles seem to do this better than any team where they have the last number of years where Jason Peters went down the year they won the Super Bowl. Haloli Vaitai stepped in, played left tackle, and he didn't skip a beat. I don't think the Vikings have that type of capability, but I do love their offensive ability when it comes to big plays and what they have the potential of doing down the field. Defense. Corner position for the Minnesota Vikings is where I see their weakness. They have Cameron Dantzler and they have Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson is a veteran. He was a former All-Pro in Arizona. He's not that guy anymore. Dantzler was burned a ton last season. And I look at this team. It's a veteran-laden defense for the Minnesota Vikings. Dalvin Tomlinson's in year 8. Harrison Phillips is in year 8. Danielle Hunter is in year 10, I believe. Jordan Hicks is at least year 6, year 7. He's on his 3rd team already. Zadarius Smith was cut from Green Bay after he missed all but 2 games last year with a neck injury. So you're bringing in veterans to a team. They still have Eric Kendricks at linebacker. I still think even at his age, he's one of the best players at his position. He is completely the leader of that defense. Even with Mike Zimmer gone, I think he will be the nucleus of that defense. He'll be the heartbeat, and he's just breathed Minnesota. He's only played for Minnesota. He balls out every time he's on the field. He'll come up with big plays in a game. So I like that about it. But it's a veteran defense, and I worry a little bit about the wear and tear with this team. And, I think corner is their biggest weakness. If they can shut down other teams' receivers, you could say, well, the Green Bay Packers don't have as good a receiving core this year. That's absolutely true. Devontae Adams is gone, so Cameron Dantzler or Patrick Peterson do not have to match up with one of those guys. They'll now have to match up with Allen Lazard and potentially Randall Cobb or whoever it might be on the wide receiver 2 side. So that's a better option. But for Minnesota, offensive line question marks if they get an injury. Their corner position is a weakness. I think great teams with great wide receivers will be able to take advantage of this corner position. And just, it's a veteran team. You're more likely to get injured than you're a young guy. Michael Pierce is gone. Xavier Rhodes, Anthony Barr, who was with the team for a decade, is now with the Dallas Cowboys. I am very optimistic about the Minnesota Vikings. I like that they're trying something new. They've had Mike Zimmer forever with Kirk Cousins, and it was so clear that Mike Zimmer did not like Kirk Cousins, that he just put up with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. He said he wasn't great. He said he was just okay on his way out. Kirk D. Cousins is what he is. If you expect him to be an Aaron Rodgers, if you expect him to be a Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be disappointed. But I do think he's a quarterback that has the potential to win this division with this team. I do think he's a quarterback with the potential to go on a deep playoff run because we've seen worse quarterbacks go deep in the playoffs. Ryan Tannehill got to an AFC Championship game. Kirk D. Cousins is better than Ryan Tannehill. You can go through the list of guys. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco won. I believe Kirk D. Cousins is more talented than Joe Flacco. For him, it's if Kevin O'Connell and Kirk can click. This is the second time that they're working together. Kevin O'Connell worked under Mike Shanahan in Washington when Kirk Cousins was drafted there in the 4th round. And they do have rapport. I think sometimes it's smart to do the check down. But there's times in a game where you can check a ball down in a 3rd and 6 early in the 4th quarter, and that drive is over. The team might go down on a 10-play drive, and before you know it, the game's out of your hands. There's times where you just need to say, fuck it, and wing the ball down the field and take a chance. You might get it intercepted, but guess what? You might hit Justin Jefferson down the seam. He makes a big catch. He's in the end zone for a touchdown, and before you know it, the game has changed, but this time in your favor. The Vikings have been a competitive team ever since Kirk Cousins got to Minnesota. Ever since they gave him the most guaranteed money in the history of the NFL. That has since changed, but he started this domino of quarterbacks getting more money than they're worth. I still like the Packers to win this division, I believe, but I do expect the Minnesota Vikings to make the playoffs. I do expect Kirk D. Cousins and the Vikings to make the playoffs in Kevin O'Connell's first season. This NFC is weaker than it used to be. It's not as strong. A lot of great quarterbacks went to the AFC. It's wide open in the NFC. You get to play the Bears twice. You get to play the Lions twice. You get the Packers twice. Those can be tough. But if you can beat the Bears twice, which I think they will, you can beat the Lions twice, which I think will be tougher than it has been in a number of years, and you split with the Packers. They seem to always beat the Packers in Minnesota. You're in good shape there. You already have a lot of division wins that you can play with, and you see what happens. I believe the Vikings play the AFC East and the NFC East this year. Those are two divisions I'd want to play. Sure, the Bills will be tough. The Patriots aren't a murderer's row team. The Dolphins aren't murderer's row. You got to go to Miami. It's not a tough place to play. You get to play the Jets. You get to play the Cowboys. I'll take my chances against those type teams. You get to play the Commanders. The Minnesota Vikings with Kirk D. Cousins and newly appointed head coach Kevin O'Connell will make the playoffs. It's crazy. I'm not all that confident in it because of some of their pieces that they have around them, because of their corner position. But I think they'll do enough to be interesting and enough to make the playoffs in the NFC. Now, a team that's been a ridicule, a team that's been a joke, a team that's been irrelevant for a long, long time. The team that's currently on Hard Knocks, the Detroit Lions, are an interesting team. The Detroit Lions, who had 3 wins last year, who really have no expectations. What do we know about the Detroit Lions? Well, if you watch Hard Knocks, which it's been okay. Hard Knocks is, I wouldn't say this is the most entertaining Hard Knocks ever. It's more, I think it's better than the Cowboys last year, which really wasn't that interesting. But the Detroit Lions have Dan Campbell at head coach, who is workout extraordinaire, doing up downs with his players, burpees. He likes to do a lot of homerish stuff. But Dan Campbell is also interesting. Dan Campbell is also colorful. And when you're Detroit, Michigan, which is, I mentioned, irrelevant, it's cold, nobody cares about Detroit, nobody wants to go there. The Red Wings suck, the Lions suck, the Tigers suck. Every sports team in Detroit stinks currently. If you think I'm being mean, go look at the Pistons record lately, and you'll know I'm telling the truth. They all stink. Well, Dwayne Casey can be interesting, I suppose. What does Steve Yzerman say? Not a whole lot. Doesn't really give you a whole lot to work with. He's pretty boring, good-looking guy. That's all I can really tell you about him. That's all I know about him. New head coach, okay, great. French guy that was on the Lightning bench. That should be interesting. So what do we got? Dan, what do we know about Dan Campbell? Well, we know from Hard Knocks that, and before Hard Knocks, that anybody that plays for his team, you're going to bite a kneecap off, and then we're going to come back up and bite the other one off. He also said in Hard Knocks this year that he doesn't matter if you got 1 ass cheek or 6 toes. We're going to go beat your ass. I don't know what the hell that means, but there's something about this team that is intriguing to me. There's something about this team that just says to me, they're going to be better than people think. They're going to be interesting. They won't be a top 10 lottery pick. I'll go as far as to say that. This offseason, the Lions did a lot. They got Jamison Williams in the draft out of Alabama. A steal, if you ask me. A great receiver. They drafted Aiden Hutchinson, 2nd overall, out of Michigan, who was a finalist for the Heisman. Another great player that I think will translate early and often into the NFL. They got Josh Reynolds, a 3rd receiver from the Los Angeles Rams, a sneaky good addition. They added Alex Anzalone, a middle linebacker. Michael Brockers brought over from the Rams. Justin Jackson, a running back, added to the group. DJ Chark, receiver from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Haloi Vaitai added to their offensive line. Some solid work from the Detroit Lions brass. Jared Goff is back at quarterback for his 2nd year after being traded for Matthew Stafford in that deal. I don't know why I feel great about this team. One reason I'm confident in this team being good, to be honest, is their offensive line. They've had a stable number of guys for a long time. Taylor Decker at left tackle has been with Detroit for 6 years, and he's been a great player every year he's played in the NFL. Jonah Jackson is at left guard. He's been there for a number of years. He's stable. Frank Ragnow is one of the best centers in all of football. It's not Jason Kelsey, but he's close. We just mentioned right guard. They added Haloi Vaitai. He won a Super Bowl championship in Philadelphia. He brings credibility. He can play anywhere on an offensive line. Going to play left guard Detroit. And they got at right tackle, they have Penei Sewell, who they drafted in the 1st round last year with the 5th pick. Sorry, with the 6th pick overall. He had an okay up and down first season, but he was drafted high. He was great at Oregon. I expect Penei Sewell to bounce back and have a good season. This offensive line will be able to protect Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a quarterback that is similar to Kirk Cousins in that he's sometimes afraid to take risks. He will dink and dunk. He will take what's there. And that can win you games. It can. But I do think they need to do more this season to push the pace, to use play action, and they're going to have the players. Jamison Williams, who they drafted 12th overall, is going to miss early parts of this season recovering from his torn ACL. He's not going to play right away, but he'll be back eventually. Still on the offense, you have DJ Chark, as I just mentioned. You have Josh Reynolds. You have Armenian St. Brown. TJ Hawkinson is still there, a great tight end who is a modern-day tight end where he can do it all. He's like a Mark Andrews. He's like a Jason Kelsey, where he is a go-to receiver. You can put him on the outside, and he can go up and make the catches. He could be a 1,000-yard receiver at tight end for me, for TJ Hawkinson. The only reason why he might not be with the Lions in his career is the quarterbacks he's played with just haven't been good enough to get him there. But they have weapons. DeAndre Swift is returning from an injury. I think he's better than people think. They got Jamal Williams behind him, who's a physical power running back who was with the Packers for a number of years. I think they have a decent 1-2 punch at running back. I like having a shifty guy, speed guy, and then having a power running back. Pretty well every team in this division does. I like that. I like having that ability to go to either guy, have different guys you can throw out there on third down, and see what they can do. It's the best offense the Lions have had in a long, long time. And I'll put it this way. Skill position players and tight ends, this offensive roster is playoff caliber. This offense can make the playoffs and be viable. Absolutely. Will they? Jared Goff is my question mark. I like Jared Goff. I don't love him. He's not a guy that breaks the game open. I mentioned he just takes what's there. He had the lowest yards per attempt last year in the NFL, which basically just means, okay, check down, check down, check down. And I don't love that about him. But my X factor for this team and why they can be good is they're a top 10 offense minus the quarterback. And I truly believe that if they had a better guy at the position, they could be a top 10 offense. They have a deep offensive line. So they have some good things about them. I think they have a good coaching. I think they get coached hard. That's something I think that's good for this team. For a team that's had no success, you need to be coached hard. You need to be pushed because you've had nothing but the inability to have any kind of success. So Detroit can do that. Now defensively, currently they're listed as having at the corner positions Armeni Arue, who is a question mark. They brought him in, and they got Will Harris. Jeff Okudah might miss the start of the season. He's injured. They drafted him 3rd overall 2 years ago. He's been nothing short of a bust. He missed most of his rookie season. He's been injured and inconsistent. I think they need to start Jeff Okudah to see what they have there. You don't have high expectations this year. See if you need to cut him. See if you need to move on from him at corner. He needs to decide what he is, whether you just accept that he wasn't a good draft pick and you move on from him. Will Harris will not be starting at corner for me, at least for the first couple games. Tracy Walker III is the strong safety. He's a good player. I like Tracy Walker III. They bring him in the offseason. They brought in Alexander Zaloni, who's going to play middle linebacker. I like him more than most. He's a physical guy who's with New Orleans for a long time, so I think he'll be good. Comes to the pass rush, I'm looking at Aiden Hutchinson. I'm looking at Michael Brockers. Hutchinson, he's intriguing to watch because he's the number 2 pick in the draft. I do think he's going to get a lot of attention put on him because he's a high draft pick. They're playing alongside Charles Harris and Aleem McNeil, who aren't exactly threats in that area. But we'll see. I don't think their defense is great. That's something I will say. I think they still need to tweak it. It's somewhere where their draft picks on defense haven't hit like some of their players they've made on offense when it comes to their offensive line draft picks, which I think they've done extremely well. But they need to continue to tweak. They got Hutchinson. But it's an intriguing team for the first time in a long time. You have a great offensive player potentially in Jamison Williams. I think he could have been the first receiver taken in this draft, but he wasn't because people were scared of his torn ACL. If it's just a one-off injury, he returns and is dominant, then you have a steal. DJ Chark's been extremely good in Jacksonville. He's used to playing with poor quarterbacks. Their offensive line is great. Josh Reynolds is a sneaky good addition to me. I think he could have a big season. He got limited playing time in Los Angeles because he had so many great receivers around him. You think they had Robert Woods, they had Cooper Kupp, you got uh, Allen Robinson. There's so many guys that you have to beat out to get reps on that team. Odell Beckham Jr. was there last year. So Josh Reynolds will get a fresh start. I'd play him in the slot for the first number of weeks. And then when Jameson Williams come back, maybe you switch each other out. Some guys, they both get snaps on the outside. But they're both speedsters. I think they'll be fast. I think you can use the short passing game, use the screen game for Williams and for Josh Reynolds to see if you can break this offense open. But I look at the Detroit Lions, and I expect them to be a whole lot better than what they were last year. I expect them to finish ahead of the Chicago Bears in this division. But not just I could see the Bears winning 3 games this year. I think they're that poor. I think they're that bad when it comes to how they're structurally built. The Detroit Lions have good pieces around them. So you think, well, you beat the Bears twice. So there's 2 wins. I think they can win one against Minnesota because it's just a division game. Weird things happen. Who knows if they can beat Green Bay? Stranger things have happened for the Detroit Lions. They still get to play on Thanksgiving, which I still want to understand. But I think the Detroit Lions, if I had to go 7.5 wins this year, I am going over. If I could see the Detroit Lions going 8-9 this year, potentially 7-10. 7-10 for the Detroit Lions would be a hell of a season. Adam Beers will podcast with me before the start of the NFL season. I can't wait to tell him this. Thinks I'm a Lions hater. I think they're going to have a decent season. They need a quarterback of the future. Winning games this year won't necessarily help them. But to me, Dan Campbell is not going to accept being a failure for much longer. They can get to 7-10. That's positive vibes, and they can look for the quarterback of their future. 8-9, 7-10. The Detroit Lions will be that this season. I expect them to be competitive. They won't make the playoffs, although they do have a great offense, but they will be in the mix. They will be at least relevant late in the season. That's right. The Detroit Lions are going to be a decent team. I know. It's hard to, I get that. It's hard to picture that right now, to really let that sink in. But I believe it will happen. We'll have to wait and see. And now, last but certainly not least, we get to the Green Bay Packers. The class of this division for some time. Still at the helm is Aaron Rodgers. Agreed to an extension this offseason. He's there long term. And Green Bay is in an interesting spot here. They went through an interesting offseason. They didn't lose coaches. They didn't lose GMs. They lost a defensive coordinator. But you look at this Green Bay Packer team, and the biggest chess piece off the board is that Davante Adams is a Las Vegas Raider. Davante Adams was traded to Las Vegas for a couple reasons. One, they couldn't fit him in under the cap. And 2, he wanted to sign a long-term extension to play alongside his college quarterback, Derek Carr. He snubbed Aaron Rodgers, if you will. They had all kinds of success. Davante Adams got balls thrown left and right. And now you're looking around saying, well, Aaron Rodgers only liked to throw the ball to Davante Adams. Who's he going to target now? Well, that's the big question. That's where do we go from here? Because Green Bay's receiving room is a little different than it has been. So we'll start with Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard is still there. He was a guy that was a 7th-round pick originally, a guy Aaron Rodgers really liked off the practice squad, and to me, he's coming into this season as their wide receiver 1. He has the most familiarity with Aaron. They've played a lot of games together, and I think they do have good rapport. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is in Kansas City. He's gone from Green Bay, so another loss for the Green Bay Packers. Randall Cobb is back. Turned 32 a couple of days ago. Randall is still playing with Aaron, so they have that connection. They know each other extremely well. So you got Allen Lazard, you got Randall Cobb. Sammy Watkins was signed. He's coming over from Kansas City. So Sammy Watkins, not a signing I'm particularly high on. He's a guy that's been worn down for a long time. I look at Juju Smith-Schuster, who went to Kansas City. I think Juju is a better signing to go there and have production this year than Sammy Watkins will be with Green Bay, just because he's had so many injuries. He's so broken down. We'll wait and see. The two big X factors for this Green Bay receiving core are Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Watson was a second-round pick for the Green Bay Packers. Doubs was a fourth-round pick. Two guys that potentially could have huge roles on this team, two guys that could have none. It's really a wait and see approach. Doubs has been the talk of training camp. He's been one of the guys you hear about and you're like, Romeo Doubs is going to have a hell of a season. People are taking him in fantasy drafts. He is the guy people are going to. Christian Watson's been injured all preseason. He hasn't played any snaps yet. He might miss time to start the season, so he's missing out on those reps with Aaron Rodgers to gain rapport. But that's really their room. Lazard is number one. Cobb is mixed in there. You have Sammy Watkins and two rookie receivers, and fit in there a little bit, although on the periphery is Amari Rodgers, a second-year wide receiver who was used primarily as a kick returner last year, a special teams player for Green Bay, coming from University of Clemson. My worry for Green Bay is what I just said. I know that he trusts Allen Lazard to an extent, although I know last year in the NFC Championship game, on the 3rd and 7, they get this third down, they win the game. But what happens? He's got Allen Lazard open in the flat. He decides not to throw the ball. He forces the football to Davante Adams, overthrows him, incomplete. It was like triple covered. He could have went to Allen Lazard, but he didn't. He trusted Davante Adams so much. This is more about Aaron Rodgers to me and his psyche than any of the receivers. He needs to trust that guys are going to make plays. He needs to trust that maybe they might not be Davante Adams, but they can be good enough to help me win this upcoming season. And it's an interesting development for Green Bay and for Aaron Rodgers. He did another weird offseason where he came in looking like Nick Cage from Con Air. He took ayahuasca. He's talked about how ayahuasca is for lovers, all this different crap. Aaron Rodgers is going to be something. But he's got to figure out this receiving core. They've apparently been dropping balls in training camp. He's been frustrated yelling at receivers. So they need to figure this out quick and in a hurry, because from the jump, you start playing and you got to start winning games. So I'm intrigued to see how he handles this moving forward with his teammates. Then we look at the running backs. A.J. Dillon, the power back, the physical force, and Aaron Jones are both back. That's nice to have. You have two different running backs again in space. Aaron Jones is one of the most crafty, one of the most just elusive running backs in all of football. I love when they're running wheel routes to Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers finds him down the seam. He is gone. He can make big plays. A.J. Dillon, you give him the ball, he can run over guys. He's built like a defensive lineman. He's just a physical force. You don't have Davante Adams this year. Use that running attack. It will help the receiving game. You have that running game going, opens up play action. Lazard, whether it's Doubs, whoever the receiver might be, they're going to be more open. It's going to be easier for Rodgers to find targets, and you build rapport early in the year. So I expect in the first number of weeks of this season, I expect to see Green Bay Packers run the football more than pass it. But you'll see more play action called in the first number of weeks than maybe Green Bay has in the past number of seasons. So I think it's interesting to see where that goes. Robert Tonyan is returning from a torn ACL, the tight end. He could have a big season for them. We'll see. Offensive line, question mark for sure. Left tackle, David Bakhtiari is returning from torn ACL, and then he hurt his knee again. He's had 2 surgeries the last 2 years. He's missed a lot of time. When he's healthy, he's an all-pro. But he hasn't been healthy, and there's still question marks there. So I'm worried about that. John Ryan, not exactly a guy you love. Josh Myers. They had Corey Linsley at center. He's now in Los Angeles protecting Justin Herbert. So it's a new center added to this offense. Jake Hansen at right guard. That used to be TJ Lang. He's gone. He retired. So he's out. Elton Jenkins playing right tackle. He played left tackle last year. He's been injured. He got injured at the end of last year as well. So their two most important offensive linemen are injured going into the season for the Green Bay Packers. They're reporting Bakhtiari will likely play week 1. Nothing on Elton Jenkins yet. But again, I've heard Bakhtiari was going to play and you never heard about it. So X factor number 1 for me is health at left tackle and just O-line in total. But I got David Bakhtiari as underlined because he's so important to Aaron. He protects his blind side. Aaron and him have a great relationship, but Aaron needs to have him or Elton Jenkins playing at left tackle so that he can do the things that he wants to do on the football field. But I don't love this offensive line. You have teams that have lesser quarterbacks, like the Philadelphia Eagles, just coming to mind, like the Detroit Lions, as we just talked about, that have stronger offensive line play with weaker quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old. He isn't what he was at 24. Yes, he can still run, but that's not his primary goal right now. You don't want him running for his life. If Green Bay is going to be successful, Minnesota will have a chance in this division if this offensive line just implodes. If you start to see it erode, you start to see Aaron Rodgers start to take hits, him getting frustrated, that's when a team like Minnesota will have a chance to win the NFC North, will have a chance to be there at the end of the year. They play each other twice, and that pass rush could feast on Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers throughout this season. So that's number 1. Mike, X factor number 2 is cornerbacks. Can the combination of Eric Stokes, who was fantastic last year, and Rasul Douglas have back-to-back career years? Rasul Douglas was on the Arizona Cardinals practice squad last year. He was signed off the Arizona practice squad midweek, and then he played Arizona Thursday night. He had an interception to steal a game for Green Bay. So I'm going to repeat that so you understand. He was signed on a Tuesday to the Green Bay Packers off the Arizona Cardinals practice squad. He played a Thursday night game against the Arizona Cardinals, his former team that he was on the practice squad with. Last play of the game, intercepted Kyler Murray to seal the win. He's back. He got an extension. Eric Stokes is in his 3rd year at corner from Georgia. He's playing good football. But not to mention, their secondary is loaded. Jair Alexander is one of the best corners in football. He got a big deal this offseason. He's back after a torn ACL. So they really have 3 guys that can play cover corner in Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas and Stokes. I think we're going to see all the guys on the field at certain times because they have Adrian Amos at strong safety, who's a veteran that can still play. I think Amos will get less snaps this year because Rasul Douglas is going to play some strong safety because he's just better than Amos at this point. They also have Darnell Savage, who is a first-round pick that's worked out. He's played extremely well. They have Rashawn Gary at linebacker, who's a first-rounder, has worked out. They have Quay Walker, who they just drafted out of Florida at right inside linebacker, who had a great game last night, I might add. Devondre Campbell, who they signed from the Falcons for league minimum. He's hoping for another great year. I love this defense. It might be the best defense in the NFL, and I'm not being hyperbolic. They got Big Dean Lowry. Kenny Clark is at nose tackle, is just a freak of nature. They signed Jaron Reed, and they kept Preston Smith, who was part of the Smith brothers. They cut Za'Darius after his injury-plagued year. This defense is a big reason why I like this team a lot. They just need Aaron Rodgers. They had a great defense last year. They need that offensive line. They need Aaron Rodgers to connect. If he can figure it out with his receivers, they can find a connection. It'll be growing pains early in the year. Maybe they lose a few games. In the playoffs, defense is so important. We saw Aaron Donald in the last play that won him a Super Bowl last year. What did he do? He made that key play on Joe Burrow. It sealed the win. What did we see for the San Francisco 49ers? A defensive player Jaquiski Tartt dropped an interception. It would have beaten the Rams, would have sent the 49ers to the Super Bowl. He drops that pass. It changes history. Rams are Super Bowl champions. It could have been them. Things happen where you just need guys to step up. I look at this Green Bay defense. I wouldn't surprise me if they rank number 1 at the end of the year when it just comes to best overall defense. Every position, they're stacked. Lowry, Smith, Clark, Campbell, Quay Walker. And that's something I give Green Bay credit for. Their first-round picks on defense all hit. I think Quay Walker's going to have a great year. Rashawn Gary, first-rounder. Jair Alexander, first-rounder. Savage, first-rounder. Eric Stokes, first-rounder. They're all playing fantastic. Green Bay is going to be a problem on defense, but what the crazy turn of events is what are they going to be on offense? And what's their offensive line? That's what we've known about this team forever. To me, this season's about Aaron Rodgers. He's criticized in the past, but you've had different excuses, offensive line. This season's about Aaron Rodgers delivering because the rest of the team is loaded. He's got a great coach in Matt LaFleur. He's got a great defense in Joe Barry running it. What more do you need, Aaron? You got a team that should be good enough to win. Not to mention, say it's November. You think you need another receiver. There's a guy recovering from a torn ACL. His name's Odell Beckham Jr. III. Do you think maybe he'd come play in Green Bay for a few months because he gets to play with Aaron Rodgers? I think he might if he thinks he's got a chance at winning his second Super Bowl in as many years. Tell everybody in New York and tell all his haters to shut the hell up. I think he might do that to get to play with Stafford and then play with Aaron Rodgers back-to-back years. Maybe. I think the Minnesota Vikings can make it interesting in this division with that offensive line. But their defense is nowhere close to Green Bay's. And Aaron Rodgers is much better than Kirk Cousins. So it shouldn't be a tight division, but I think it will be. For some reason, I think it will be. I think Minnesota will keep it close. I expect the Lions to have over 7.5 wins this season. That means they'll have 8. I'm going to regret saying that. We're in August. But what the hell? Detroit Lions deserve some praise. They deserve somebody to believe in them. Nobody in Detroit does. I will, I guess. And the Chicago Bears are going to stink. Sorry, Mike Wilbon, but you know it too. That's the NFC North. That's fun. I love doing these because it helps me get ready. It's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of getting ready to talk about it, but I love doing them. They're fun. NFC South. Demain matin. Tomorrow morning, if you're not familiar with the French language. We'll cover the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons, and of course, the New Orleans Saints. Maybe a few playoff teams from that division. One for sure, somebody's going to win the division. There might be a couple teams from that division that make the playoffs. There's a little tease before tomorrow's podcast, but what we got tonight, Friday night, we got the Tour Championship ongoing tonight. That should be fun. We got some baseball, Angels, Jays. Doubleheader of CFL action. Might be watching that tonight. Got a lot of Vegas Raiders, New England Patriots NFL preseason. Cowboys, Seahawks NFL preseason. Might check that out. Likely going to watch that because why not? Should be a good Friday night. We'll be back tomorrow morning to talk about anything that happens tonight and get to the NFC South. So, as always, have a great weekend, everybody. Stay happy, stay safe. As always, just to the point.